Welcome to Bass University Live, everybody. Enjoying my angler's coffee. Made on the West Coast, put together out there, which is very cool because we've got an extra special West Coast guest with us. We had on the show back in 2017, and we haven't talked to you since then. And it's great to have you with us. This is Paul Bailey, Big Bait Bailey, known out on the West, known all over for fishing Clear Lake and catching all the giants out there. Man, how you doing? It's good to have you with us.
I'm good, man. Thank you guys for having me. This is awesome. This is going to be a treat.
Yeah, it's a treat for us. We've been moving around the country at Bass University. We've been talking to Texas and about O.H. Ivy. We had last week we were talking with Matt Airy all about the Carolinas and the amazing fishing there and the spotted bass and all that's going on in the Carolinas. So it's really cool. We're heading out west today, and you're the man. It was awesome. I look back and we interviewed you back in 2017, and we were talking about big baits and what was going on then. And man, we just before the show started, we were talking about the drought. A lot has happened between 2017 and now out there on Clear Lake, hasn't it? It's been going through some changes.
Yeah, we went through a crazy 10-year cycle on this lake, and it was cool to experience it. I was here when Clear Lake was super good. That's when I first moved here. Big weights, big fish, lots of water. And then we went through this 10-year period where we didn't get much rain and the lake just slowly started getting lower and lower. And so now we're back to a full pool for the last couple of years. And it's been, you can see the lake come on the upswing, especially the last 2 years. And it's just been awesome to see it kind of progress again from what it was to being super shallow and not fishing very well. To right back to firing again as soon as we got water. So it's been cool to watch the cycle of the lake happen. And we call it a 10-year cycle out here in California. It seems like all the lakes go through it.
Wow, you guys went drought for a long time. I remember we saw images of Lake Mead, which was, I guess, experiencing the same drought as you. We've seen things there that they've never seen before. How low did it get out there?
It got pretty low. We were, below 20% on a lot of the reservoirs. I'm not sure the exact numbers for Lake Mead, but a lot of the Northern California reservoirs and even the Southern California reservoirs, we were down a good, 100 feet, 150 feet of water that typically we would get back in rain, man. We just were not getting rain for 3 to 4 years in a row. So it was, we were hurting, man. It was bad. And then all of a sudden, we had a pretty good El Nino, and then another good El Nino year that hit it 2 years after that, and just filled everything right back up. And everything seems to have turned right back around.
What's the El Nino year? What is is that like is that hurricane or?
No, that's just basically the Pacific Ocean out here on the West Coast. It goes through temperature changes, and wherever the temperature, sometimes the warm water will drift up into California, and that will produce an El Nino year for us, which keeps the storms on a straight track into California. And then a La Nina year, it tends to put the pressure systems on on a northern loop that kind of misses California to the north in Oregon, and then it goes down into Idaho. And so all those storms will track up on those years, and they won't quite hit California. And we got stuck in one of those for a good 4 or 5 years, to where we just weren't getting the storm systems. They were all just missing us. And then that El Nino came, and systems dropped down into the California level, and they just started pummeling us. And we've been getting them ever since. We have a ton of rain this year already too in California, which is
so El Nino and the bass, they're cool. Like they're on the same program. They're like El Nino.
Yes, they're definitely friends, because they need the water too. Everything needs the water. When the water gets real low, the baitfish don't do well. The bass don't do well, and everything kind of gets affected from it. So,
is it true the government out there is prevented the rain from falling?
No. No. I don't think the government really has. Obviously, we know they're controlling the weather, and we know they're spraying and seeding clouds. And you can go to county websites here in California, like Santa Barbara County, and they'll tell you when they're going to cloud seed. They'll literally tell you, "Yeah, we're gonna seed this storm, guys. So get ready. It could be a little more violent than we're expecting. We're gonna go ahead and seed all the clouds right now and drop some more rain on us." And they're not even keeping it a secret anymore. So they're definitely playing with it a little bit. I don't think they were the main cause of us not getting rain. No.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
Yep.
Cloud seeding. Well,
Cloud seeding. They do it, man. It's no secret anymore. They don't even try to hide it. The counties now are telling you when they're going to do it.
How do they cloud seed?
I don't exactly know the process. I know they're shooting stuff into the clouds from the ground, and I know they're dropping stuff into the clouds from airplanes, and it just produces more rain. I'm not the scientist behind that. I don't know a whole lot about it, but they definitely do it.
Well, I'm glad they did it out there. I'm glad you got the water. Is what?
Yeah.
It seems like it's turned around. When the lake was low, what happens that makes it challenging? Because you seem to indicate that low tide at my house, we crush them. So
Right.
When you got the extreme low water out there, it turned the lake upside down. It didn't like that condition.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Clear Lake is a natural lake. I'll talk specifically about Clear Lake and how it affects it here.
Yeah.
Clear Lake is a natural lake. It's the oldest lake in California, probably the oldest lake in the United States. From what I've heard, it's older than the Great Lakes. It's been here a really long time. There's a lot of creek systems that feed this lake on the north end, and we have a big feeder creek on the south end as well. So when the water's not up and those creeks aren't flowing, our baitfish don't have a place to go. We have a fish here called a hitch, and the hitch is a big deal on Clear Lake. And you can think of a hitch. It looks like a little carp, is what it looks like. But they go into the streams and the creeks here, and they spawn in the creeks, and they need current coming out of the creeks. They need those creeks full because they need to run a few miles, kind of like a salmon would from the ocean into a river to go spawn. And when there's no water coming out of those creeks, something in their brain tells them, hey, don't go in. Don't go in. And so we had this, 3 to 5 year spell where those hitch weren't doing what they usually do. They weren't going into the creeks to spawn. They weren't able to get in as far. So they were stuck out in the lake trying to spawn. And it really just messed with the whole cycle of the lake. And on this lake especially, we need those hitch. Those hitch have been looked at for a long time by these bass. Those bass teach each other how to hunt here. And when they couldn't go after those hits, those bass didn't really know what to do. They started setting up in different areas. They weren't around as long in areas. They'd stay for months and months during the pre-spawn. They'd be there for a couple days when the hitch were there, and then the hitch couldn't go in. So then they took off to the middle of the lake, chasing them back out into the middle of the lake. And we had this, it was just a weird cycle we were going through. And once we got a ton of rain, those fish, all the hitch and all the shad and everything started using the creek mouths and using the creeks again. And everything kind of went back to its normal cycle where we can kind of predict where they were going to go and what they were going to do. And that is really the name of the game, is we need moving water for our bait fish to really thrive. And now that we've got it, we're back.
Yeah. Happy hitch, happy bass.
Happy hitch, happy bass. Happy shad, too. The shad here, during those low water years, we weren't seeing a ton of shad. And once we got the rain again a couple years back, we started seeing the giant, massive schools of shad out in the lake, and the fish and the birds. And we've got thousands of grebes and seagulls, and everything kind of came back to the lake to feed again. And that's kind of when everything went on the upswing.
Is that the threadfin out there, or is it gizzard shad?
Yep, we have threadfin in Clear Lake. We do have gizzard shad in some of the lakes here in California, but the ones in Clear Lake are all threadfins.
I got you. Okay. The bluebacks haven't made their way out there?
No blueback herrings, just the hitch and the regular threadfin shads, and then of course we've got the crappie, the bluegill. We call them sculpin out here, but it's pretty much a goby. Yeah. We've got those in the lake too, so we've got a ton of food in this lake.
You got gobies, huh?
Yeah, it's the West Coast version of a goby. It's called the sculpin.
Right. Did they get in from the same reason, like commercial shipping, or like what?
I'm not sure how those all
always been there.
Yeah, they've been here since I've been here, so I'm not sure how the sculpin eventually made it in here, but we've definitely got the bait fish to produce.
Now, do you see like the Sculpin, lakes that have more of them and lakes that have less of them, do you see that making the fish behave differently as far as like where they position, where they set up, how deep they orient to certain times of the year?
Not so much. What I did notice is during the low water years, we were getting a really good Sculpin bite. And by that, I mean, some of the bait choices we were making, like the dark sleeper, for example,
Right.
looks like a little Sculpin, looks like a little goby. That bite was awesome during the summertime when the water was low, the water was warm. We were catching the heck out of them on those Sculpin baits. And then once we filled up, we weren't getting bit on that stuff anymore. And so it's kind of like the fish knew the water was low and they knew, all right, now we got to go target these Sculpin that are easy to get and they're easy to access now. And so that's kind of how we attacked it. Is we saw certain bait fish prevail during the low waters and then other big fish come back when we get the high water.
It's interesting, Pete, how that correlation there, like when the goby effect on, say, the St. Lawrence River and the Great Lakes and places like that on the smallmouth, it has made them get giant. But on the West Coast, it seems like to me like the Hitch is it a more pelagic fish by nature than a Sculpin, or like, because it seems like your fish got bigger when they got back up high in the water column, and like other places they get bigger when they start feeding on the stuff that's down. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So the Hitch here, they do. It's weird. They're kind of a big mystery. We don't see them typically during during the summer months and say into fall and whatnot. We're going to see those Hitch go out to the middle of the lake. And they're not really pelagic. You're not going to see them per se on your live scope in giant schools swimming around. They will bury in the mud and they sit in the mud. And so you guys know, as with the live scope, you've got that 1 foot to 2 foot variance on the bottom that you can't really see. They can hide out pretty well. Right. So the Hitch, they love to live on the bottom here. And when they're not running into the creeks and they're not feeding during the fall, they're really just bottom sitters. We don't see them swimming around everywhere and giant schools of them like you would a shad or anything else. It's really kind of a mystery fish on what those things do. But then again, the Sculpin, they do the same thing. They're bottom feeders too. So what I've noticed here is we get a lot of these fish just live in that 1 to 2 foot connected to the bottom zone here. We don't have a lot of roaming fish that swim up in the water column here. And I mentioned this on the last show that I did, but we kind of dove into it to where these fish are bottom feeders. They want to feed down. They don't like to feed up very often. And so, so I think it was just a matter of the low water that the Hitch weren't showing themselves and putting themselves in front of the bass, because you guys know bass. They like structure. They want to be next to a pole. They want to be next to a rock in the grass. The Hitch were buried in the mud. And so we weren't seeing that correlation between the two very often during the low water years. And then once the water came up and those, like I said, those Hitch were able to start swimming into the creeks again, and the bass the bass knew where to be to find them, everything started to come back again. But bottom feeders on Clear Lake is very prevalent. We don't have very many fish that are feeding up and chasing schools of fish around the middle of the lake.
Man, that's blowing my mind to hear that, just because preconceived notions with Clear Lake and swimbait fishing and A-rig fishing, like you telling me that a lot of these fish are relating to the bottom is kind of it seems kind of crazy to me, Pete.
I agree, because I'm last time we talked to you, forward facing sonar was just somebody's fantasy, and and now you're seeing it, and you're identifying that these Hitch are and a lot of bait fish are down. A lot of the strategy, and I want to ask you this, a lot of the strategies for using that sonar is triggering strikes by keeping baits up above the fish and not letting them get down. Is that true on Clear Lake, or are you having to, get that bait down into the bottom to get those fish to bite?
They get in different moods. I noticed during the cold water months, which is December, January, into February, those fish will look up and feed up. They're not 100% anti-feeding up. We've got the schools of shad. When the water gets cold, we get that 46 to 49 degrees is kind of where we're at right now. And there are schools of shad out there. You'll see balls of shad on your live scope. You will see catfish and crappie and bass pushing those schools around. But it seems like once they push that school of bait out of their comfort zone, out of their little zone that they like to live in, they don't keep chasing them across the lake. All the bass will kind of go back to the ledge and live on that ledge and wait for more bait to come to them. So they're not so much roaming, but they seem to always come off the bottom when they chase. Yeah. They're not just swimming around like until they eat the whole ball and then they swim off and find another ball. They don't really do that here. They live in an area and they wait for the food to come to them, which is really staple at Clear Lake. They pick an area that they know how to hunt, and they wait for the food to come to them. And when it comes to them, then they'll go ahead and rise up off the bottom and start getting it. During the summertime, complete opposite. You don't see any bait fish up swimming around. We've got a lot of algae in the water, and that's when we're really targeting those bottom fish. So summer through fall, before the water cools down, we're stuck on the bottom. Crankbaits, jigs, Carolina rigs, Alabama rigs that are dragging on the bottom. That's kind of the deal. And then when the water gets cold, these fish will start to look up a little bit. I'm not going to say they're all feeding up, because I catch a lot of them on the bottom going as slow as I can, even in these cold water months. But that's typically kind of what they do here. They'll chase up a little bit when it's cold, and the rest of the time these fish are glued down to the bottom. Interesting.
Yeah, they were. At Ivy, we were talking about this same thing. They get into that deep flats near the channels, and they get down in that mud. You can't see them that good, but they're down in about a 30-foot zone. Are they getting that deep on Clear Lake, or what's the target zone?
Yeah, no, I think our deepest point of Clear Lake is maybe 50 feet in two spots. So there is no deeper water than that. So their huntable range here is from 10 to 30, maybe 35 at the most. If you look at the topography on the maps of Clear Lake, not much structure down below 35 foot for them to hold on. There's obviously silt and mud. These fish typically don't go sit in the mud. They want to be next to a rock. They want to be next to something that they can relate to kind of make them hit.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense. We talked about, and I saw their tackle warehouse fly up there, because I want to talk about some baits. And the one that occurred to me is everybody's pinging a minnow these days. I know with the Hitch out there, are you using those like 7 and 9 inch minnows, the longer size? Is that something that's a factor out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Time of year is going to predict on how big of a minnow I'm going to shake. We're coming into the season right now that we're being mid to late February right now, where I'm going to start upsizing the bait a little bit. I'm going to go to those 6-inch, 7-inch Sakamata shads. Even the 8-inch Sakamata shad, I throw that one a lot here.
That sounds a whole lot better than pinging a 3-inch minnow. I don't know why. It just seems more fun.
Yes, no, it absolutely is. And you know what's weird is throwing like a 7 or 8-inch minnow on a spinning rod. I mean, you spinning rods like whoo-shoo.
That's where the 4,000 size Shimano comes in.
Yep. Excuse me. But so we're coming into the time of year where those Hitch are going to start going into the creeks and spawning. We've got a ton of water coming in, so their brains are already saying go in. I've already seen some Hitch start to go in the creeks, and so at that point, the bass are looking at the Hitch and not so much the shad. So we're right on the cusp of where I'm going to go from my 4 and 5-inch minnow that I've been throwing all winter to the 6, 7, and 8-inch minnows. We're right there right now because they're making the switch to Hitch right now.
Oh, that's excellent. And I know the Hitch is, I guess responsible for where you got your name, or your moniker, Big Bait Bailey, using the big glides, the big swim baits. In the world of the pig and the minnow, or do they still have a home in your arsenal?
Absolutely.
It's changed.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I still throw a swim bait. A lot of the year, I'll throw a swim bait. I won't even be pinging a minnow here come first week of March, second week of March. I'm not going to have that minnow in my hand very often. I'm going to be throwing the big glide baits, the 6, 7, 8-inch weedless baits, the bigger swim baits, because they are focused on those hitch, and it is fairly shallow. We're going to be fishing 1 to 12 foot of water here for the next 6 months, starting early March. And so at that point, I'll put the minnow down. There's always a place for it. You can still get bit on the smaller minnows, throughout the year. I'm going to start focusing on my big swim baits come real soon. The hitch here, the male hitch are 3 to 6 inches long, I'm going to say roughly. And the female hitch are 7 to 22 inches long. Oh. And so, we get away with 14-inch glides here, and the fish eat them. They're not afraid of those big baits here. So that's my bread and butter, and that's what I love to do. So that will be happening here in the next 6 weeks, no doubt.
Oh, what was it like back whenever you first got to California, or not first got to California, but first got to diving in on Clear Lake, and it was like you're throwing a 10-inch bait and then a 12-inch bait, and it's like, did the point ever cross your mind of like, how big of a bait can I actually throw and realistically make a bass attack it?
Yeah, absolutely. We kept going up and up and up. One of my good buddies here, Gary Collins, he owns a company called GCJ Lures. He makes these big 12-inch glides. They're big. And all he did was he kept upsizing and upsizing and upsizing and proving to us that they don't care how big it is. The bigger, the better. Until we got to a certain point where the majority of the fish saw that bait so many times that we started to go backwards again. We started to go back to the 7-inch baits, the 8-inch baits, the 9-inch baits. They get conditioned just like every other lake in the country. These fish get conditioned. And for a few years there, we were going 10-inch, 12-inch, 14, and now we're back to 7, 8, 9 again. And we're just trying to not train them and completely not catch fish. Because that does happen. You'll throw a bait out there and you get a ton of followers. They never bite it. You size it down. All of a sudden, they're biting it again. And we just go through those cycles. That's kind of where we're at now.
I remember the great Bassmaster episode where Steve Kennedy is out there upsizing and catching giants 9-pounders and missing them right at the or remember that one he hooked it outside the mouth.
Oh gosh.
And had to release it. Oh my God, that was like 9 or 10 pounds.
He let go like 2 9s and a 10 in one day that I remember watching that.
Yes.
I moved up here probably 2 years after that tournament. Okay. And it wasn't because of that tournament. I moved up here because of work, and my boss had started an electrical company and moved up here, and I kind of moved up here for that, with the back of my mind saying, holy crud, Clear Lake is a bass factory, and this is going to be cool. But yeah, no, that's exactly what happened with Steve.
That was amazing footage, and he kept upsizing. But I remember talking to Skeet about Clear Lake too, and Ish, and just the massive schools of fish that they talked about it was like fantasy land, groups of 5 to 10 pounders just coming off of a bush or something like that. With the water up and the lake's healthy again, are you seeing is Clear Lake back to the heyday, or where are we at right now?
It is back, baby. It is 100% back. This winter, there has been so many. The tournaments you've needed more than 35 pounds to win the last 4 tournaments here.
Wow.
And top 5, I think I got 3rd last week. I had 34.40. And I was 3rd place. And going in all day long, I knew I wasn't going to win. I knew we had a 474. We had an 877 and 807. I think it was a 680 and a 620 with a 4-pounder in my live well. And I told my team partner, I said, if we don't ditch this 4-pounder for a 7-pounder, we have no chance. I said, somebody's going to have 35 to 36 pounds. And sure enough, 2 guys had 35. Another guy had 36. And it is back. We've got schools, 5 to 10 pounders. There's 50 fish coming off of a boulder the size of this bedroom that are all between 5 and 10 pounds. And there it is 100% back, just like Skeet and Ish said. Those fish now will start moving to the north end where a lot of that tournament took place. And they get in those big giant schools. There'll be 50 to 100, 200, 300, 5 to 10 pound class fish sitting at a creek mouth. And they're just waiting for the hitch to swim over the top of them and go in. And that's why they sit there. They've learned how to hunt this lake really well.
That's incredible. what I guess you can see them visually, but man, they've got to black out your sonar. Now that you can, scope out there and see all this happening, that's got to be an amazing sight on your sonar.
It is. You should I'm shocked at some of the fish I've thrown out in the last couple of years, like pinging a minnow. I'm like, oh, that's for sure a 15-pound catfish. And you whip your minnow over there and wham, 9 or 10 pounder gets a bass, They are bass. Like, it just doesn't make sense in my brain that there's that many big fish swimming around in this lake.
Oh my
God.
Wow. When you hook one of those giants and they're in a big group of fish, do they like smallmouth, when you hook one, like the bottom will buzz, like they all kind of start to show themselves. Does that happen? Like, you see 50
absolutely. Like last week on one of my guide trips, I was trying to tell my client, hey, listen, they're going to come off the rock like bumblebees. They're going to look like a bunch of bumblebees behind your bait. And what we want to happen is the bumblebees are really smart. So we want the one bumblebee that's at the bottom that's jealous. We need I call it thievery. We need the thievery to happen. He'll race in front of all of them and go get it. And while the other ones just follow it. But we get that a lot here, just like you're saying, where you'll get one to come up, two to come up. And then when you hook one, they all want to come do it. And 30, 40, 50 of them behind it. And they are megas. And we get that a lot here. It's an awesome sight.
That is insane. Sorry, Pete. Sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
No, I just was curious. Are you able to get your guys on them like that? Like, we'll double up and triple up on smallmouth because they get voracious. Yeah. Are you multiple 5 to 10 pounders on at the same time? Does that happen?
No. If there's 20 fish that come off a rock, I tell my client we're lucky to catch one of them. They're really smart. We have a lot of pressure on this lake, so they see these minnows all day long from different anglers. You're really just trying to catch the dumb one, and that's what I tell my clients too. We're going to see a ton of fish today. We're trying to catch the dumbest ones. We're not trying to catch every one that's behind our bait, because I like to tell them, hey, if you leave that minnow in front of that fish for too long and you just shake it at the same speed, at the same retrieve, they're never going to bite it. They've seen that a million times. So what I try to do with my clients is I try to really emphasize, get the bait coming away from them, make them chase it. Because if they aren't chasing it in an erratic motion, they were never going to eat it to begin with. I've seen it 5,000 times. And so, no, we don't get the multiples. We're hoping one of the 50 gets stupid on it, and that's how we fish the fight.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. The competition and the water's clear. They get the pressure. That makes sense. But I had I wanted to, things have been changing, over in the big bait world. It's so awesome that you're throwing them, and people love to fish them. What's changed for you? Like, I want to know. I'm going out there. I'm going after these hitch eaters. What are Paul Bailey's top 5 big baits right now? What are the baits you're firing at these fish?
Take notes.
The top 5. All right. So back in 2017, when we first talked, it was all about the Huddleston, the 8-inch Huddleston, the 6-inch Huddleston. Slow as you can retrieve that thing on the bottom. I'm talking a full cast, take you 3.5 minutes to get it back to the boat. That's how slow we were fishing it. That's how I got 90% of my 10+ pounders to bite back then. Fast forward 8 years after the drought, it seems like when we went through those drought years, we had a big die-off of bass. And we saw it 2 summers in a row here where a lot of our biggest ones died. And then after that die-off happened, the lake started, like I said, to replenish a little bit. Fish started to come back. They didn't want to eat my Huddleston anymore. I've thrown that thing religiously the last 3 years during the winter on my favorite spots that I used to catch. I can't tell you how many fish off of. I can't even get a bite anymore. And I honestly think that the group of fish that were eating that Huddleston, I think they died. And I'm a firm believer that these fish teach each other how to hunt in areas, and the little fish are watching the big fish to see what they go after. And then they kind of remember, and then they start, when they get to of size, they start going after those also. I couldn't even get 2 and 3 pounders to bite that Huddleston anymore, let alone 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounders anymore. So what happened was we had to go to the glide baits. and to the paddle tail baits, and something that was different, moving at a different speed, hitting the rocks a little bit different. So as rewind a little bit, 7 years ago, the Huddleston was my favorite. I'd throw the Huddleston, I'd throw the A-rig, I would throw some bottom bouncing baits like a Gancraft Bariki Shad, for example, on a weedless hook. That's always been a really good one here. Now, fast forward 7 years after the die off, and after, you know, these fish don't want to look at the Huddleston anymore. And this is a glide bait factory, I call it. We throw glide baits at them year round here now. And that's probably the number one bait that I have on my deck is a glide bait. I'm going to have an 8-inch DS Shad glide. It's called a DS Shad glide. It is an awesome bait. I can work it any part of the water column, any speed retrieve that I want. That bait won't blow out. It won't turn sideways. It won't roll upside down per se when you're getting speed on with it. That is one of my favorite ones. Another one is the tried and true Slide Swimmer 250 by Depths. That one is going to be on my deck 6-7 months out of the year also. And not that we're making the fish come up. I'm still fishing these baits really close to the bottom. But it's just that the way those are swimming now, the fish aren't looking at the really slow baits like they used to. And I honestly think it's because of the die-off and the smaller fish not being taught how to hunt those bottom fish anymore. Once we had the big die-off and we lost, I'm going to say we lost 10,000 fish over 5 pounds in our lake, maybe more. There were areas we could walk across coves of 5 to 10 pounders dead floating on the surface. I mean, there was 100 yards off the bank for 200 yards down the bank, and it was just dead 5 to 10 pounders. We were going through trying to find teenagers and wow, how many did we lose in this area? And it was every area of the lake. So I think that had a lot to do with why they won't eat the Huddleston anymore and why they kind of changed their feeding habits. But at the same time, they came back really strong. This lake bounced back, 6-7 years after that die-off. I think we have just as many 5 to 10 pounders now as we did 7 years ago before the die-off. And so honestly, I think every lake's going to be different. I don't think you can correlate every lake to Clear Lake because of our unique situation of the shallow water, the Hitch, and how much bait fish is actually in here. But top 5 baits, I'm going to call it a Huddleston. I'm going to call it a DS Shad glide, the 8-inch one. I'm going to call a Slide Swimmer 250 is probably my third go-to. And then I'm going to have a 6.8 Bariki Shad and probably a 6.8 Kitex, something in the weedless realm.
Right.
Working Class Zero has some really cool baits. The weedless baits that Mike Gilbert makes are amazing. And those seem to have taken off here recently, being weedless and being that I can get them through the rocks and stuff. So those are going to be my top 5 baits coming to Clear Lake. I'm going to have an 8-inch glide, a 9-inch glide, and something between 6 and 9 inches that I can get through the rocks easily. Those would be my top 5.
Okay. Rich, let's put together our wish list.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Especially when you start talking about the weedless variety. It's, speaking my language. I'm a Chesapeake Bay grass guy. And when I start thinking about big baits, it's like, all right, got to get it through the milfoil, got to get it through the eelgrass, got to get it through the drilla. It's cool stuff.
It's a big deal here too. And a lot of the reasons I'm fishing the weedless baits, not so much the grass, it's more the rocks and being able to come through the boulders here. We have a lot of lava rock, and boy, this place is a lure eater. There's spots where you can fish down a 100-foot stretch. You'll lose 15 jigs and 15 casts.
How about it, Pete? Poplar Point.
And so that's why I'm fishing a lot of the weedless baits. I'm fishing them in the rocks, not per se around the grass, but I need to be able to get them home through those rocks, and that's a big deal.
Man, it sounds like you might be able to go diving for some glide baits out there.
I've called, man. I got a YouTuber buddy, Jake. He's called D Almighty on YouTube. He's got 10 million followers or something crazy. But he goes and does all the gun retrievals in rivers and finds wallets and phones, and he does that. I've asked him to come out here so many times because of what I know is down on the bottom of this lake that we've all broke off over the years. Yeah. And he would love to. The problem with Clear Lake is it doesn't really get that clear. They call it Clear Lake, but we never have more than 5-foot visibility for a month in this lake. And so his thought is, dude, it's too dangerous for me to get down there with no visibility and that many sticky lures on the bottom. It's just too dangerous for him to do it. But I thought just like you, like, holy cow, man, let's get a diver down there and see what's really down there. But they just won't do it. It's not clear enough for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a bad deal. You're hung up on a set of treble hooks and the other set is hung in the rocks.
Yeah.
You're pinned to the bottom. That's
I know. It's a dangerous situation.
That treble.
Well, back to the fish kill. Was that a result of the low water, or was there some other environmental impact that caused that? Is there any theories about what happened?
Yeah, it was a combination of a few things. We had really low water that year, where the north end of the lake is an average of 12 feet deep. The south end of the lake is an average of maybe 20 feet deep. And so during summer, when our water hit that 84, 85 degrees, the county came through and decided to spray all the grass the warmest 2 weeks of the whole summer. And they didn't just do a portion of the lake, they did the whole lake in a week. And them doing that, the Department of Fish and Game has strict rules about when they can spray for grass. They say if the water's over 80 degrees, you cannot spray for grass. County disregarded it, went out, sprayed anyways, killed thousands and thousands of fish. It took 2 weeks for all those fish to die. And that was the main reason. It was a combination of low water, high water temperature, and the county spraying when they shouldn't have. And that's what killed those fish. And DFG was not happy. The DFG came in and said, listen, you guys really got to watch the water temperatures. There's a reason we have these rules. I don't think any fines were handed out. I think it was a very political game that was being played. But it was a combination of low water, the city spraying when they shouldn't have, and a really warm 2 week stretch that we had.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking to see fish of that magnitude, expire like that. But I'm glad it's back, and you're catching them. You're catching them on glides. I got to ask you a technical question on glide baits. Hardest bait, arguably, to land a fish with. What do you do? Are you tricking them out? Are you doing something with hooks or rod, or what are you doing to increase your landing percentage?
I think I fish big baits a little different than a lot of guys. I think I fish for bass a little different. I'm the type of guy that wants to hook one and just grind them in. I am not nice to a bass whatsoever. I'm not letting them pull. I'm not letting them jump. I'm trying to get the fish to the surface, and I'm just going to ski them right into the boat. And I think people think that when you pull that hard on a bass, you have a chance of ripping the hooks out. The hooks are going to rip out no matter how hard you pull on a bass. They're going to pull the other way just as hard as you can pull on them towards you. So I look at it as get them in the boat as quick as possible. The longer they're out there swimming around thrashing, the more, they're going to get a hook in their lip. If they're down there thrashing for 30 seconds, that hole's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually that hook's going to come out. If I hook one and I get him in the boat within 10 seconds, that thing's still in there. I haven't made a very big hole. He hasn't got to flop around very much. So I'm a firm believer in wenching on the fish, get them in the boat, especially with a glide bait. I know people like to be nice because the dangling treble hooks, but when they get that thing, man, they got it. Get a hook in them, grind them suckers in, and flip them into the boat. Don't be nice to them. You're going to land more fish. I'm a true firm believer in that.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Are you netting these fish mostly, or, boat flipping a 10-pounder is a little bit scary.
Yeah, there's a certain range. I'll flip anything up to say 7.5 pounds. I'm going to be boat flipping those 99% of the time. 25-pound test is what I usually have on most of my big swim bait rods, 20 to 25-pound test. And you can get them suckers in the boat real quick, real easy, without putting a lot of pressure on the line or the rod if you're doing it right. The net comes out when I see it could be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pounds. That's when you're going to see me wind them to the boat and then reach down and grab that net and go ahead and try to scoop them, because I don't want to lose my $150 lure mainly. I'm not worried about the 8, 9, 10-pound bass that I've got. I don't want to break my lure off when I go for that boat flip, because we're fishing such expensive glide baits, and swim baits in general are expensive. And we're not rich, man. We got to get our bait back. So I'm mainly netting fish so I don't lose my bait. I'm not worried about the fish. If I like with a Huddleston $19, $20 lure, I'm going to boat flip 10 pounders too. I don't really use a net. The only reason I use a net is to save the bait. That's my theory.
Okay.
Yep.
If your net's not available, like in some of the tournaments, maybe you can't use a net. Man, what's the strategy there? Because if you gotta get down and hand land him because he's too big, man, you just that's got to be the heartbreak moment, right? Right at the boat.
It's a heartbreak moment. I call it the Brandon Polinick moment. You just go down there and have no regard for hooks in your hands. Just go down there and start grabbing, because we all seen Brandon do it a million times. We've seen hooks in his hands and his arms, and you just go down and get them as quick as you can. That's kind of the motto you have to go by. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get your hand hooked.
Well, we're not advocating the Brandon Polinick technique, people. Of course, Brandon also famously won the state wrestling championship with a compound fracture with a bone sticking through his arm, and continued on to win that match and win the state championship. So I guess he has a little more tolerance for pain than most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you don't ever want to get a hook in your hand, people. We're not advocating for that. But at a certain point, when you're in a tournament and you're in the heat of the moment, you've got to decide: get the fish in now, just go down and grab.
And the worst is, these aren't those light wire hooks.
Yeah, this isn't the Mega Bass Top 110 Vision hook. This is like a freaking gaff.
Yeah, we're fishing 2/0 gummies, 2/0 owners, big giant hooks. And
oh man!
Every time I've been hooked, it seems like I've got hooked with a 2/0 hook. I've never had a little tiny, size 2 or size 4 treble in me. It's always a big giant one from a glide bait, from a trap hook on a weedless bait, something of the sort. Those are the ones I always get in me, the biggest ones. Last year I got an 8/0 in my neck right here. All the way through the neck right here. It was pouring rain. I stepped behind my team partner to make a cast. He didn't know I stepped behind him, and he went back and that thing went
my god,
right all the way through, and it felt like I got punched. My ears were ringing. I was spinning circles, dizzy, and So yeah, you got to be careful, but it seems like the big hooks, they love me. I know what you're saying.
That's crazy, man. That's scary. I mean, man, that's too close to your jugular.
Yeah, way too close to the jugular. I had all my rain gear on. I had my hood kind of like this, and somehow it still managed to get me right up in there. And hey, bad luck. It happens to some people, me more than others, I'm sure, but.
So you got to be good at getting those hooks out.
Yeah, actually, I've line tricked every hook that's come into me. The 2/0 treble hooks that I've got in my arms and my hands, line trick, it comes right out. I didn't know if the 8/0 owner beast hook was gonna work with the line trick because it's such a thick gauge hook. But we did it. I laid down on my back.
My god!
I got sucker on there. I said 1, 2, 3, go, and he said, "Come right out. No blood, no nothing." Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, talk to me about these components. Are you doing any, like a lot of guys are modifying to keep baits, pinned? We're seeing guys do a braided trick where they eliminate the split ring, and they use braided line, rotating, swiveled attachments here. Guys will upsize the split rings. Are you doing that with any of your baits, or are you just using the baits that already come beefed up?
I'll be honest with you. I fish 95% of my baits the way they come straight out of the package.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big believer. I fish a lot. I fish 4 or 5 days a week. I catch a lot of fish. I hook a lot of fish. To me, losing a fish isn't the end of the world. Now, to my clients, it's a big deal. So I'm always going to have the best setup for my clients when they're throwing. But me personally, I'm throwing the stuff straight out of the package most of the time. I do kind of trick with some, different hooks than they come with out of the package. But as far as the braided line and having to have a swivel on the bottom of the glide baits or on the DRTs like you're holding there, I'm fishing them suckers straight out of the package. Like I said, 99% of the time. These companies design these baits to do a certain thing with the hardware that they have on them. And I keep that in mind. And so I try to take that into consideration every time I point out, like, this is how they want it to swim, the way they're selling it to me right here.
Right.
I don't want to tune on something that works great out of the package. So I'm not a big tuner of baits. I know a lot of guys are, and a lot of guys swear by it, but I'm not mad when an 8-pounder comes off and I'm out there fun fishing, or, if I have a 10-pounder jump off. To me, it's the hunt, it's the hook set, it's knowing that, hey, look, that was a big one. I'm satisfied. So I'm not a big tinkerer, but I know a lot of guys are, and to a lot of guys, it is a big deal.
Yeah. It's interesting. I kind of feel the same way you do. Like, for me, it's about the hunt, the stalk, triggering the strike. That's the magic for me. So if I lose them, I lose them. I saw them, and I made the magic happen. But
that's it. Now, when I get a bait into a client's hand per se, who's come from Japan or they've come from the East Coast to fish Clear Lake, and they may only get 1 or 2 shots at one of these in the next day or two. And then I'm going to make sure I've got brand new hooks on, and I've got the ones that are going to be the stickiest that I know I've caught the most fish on. I will go do that for them. But for myself, like I said, I'm not mad when I lose a fish. Now, if it's in a tournament, yeah, you're going to be a little bummed because it costs you some money. But if I'm out there fun fishing or whatever, oh, well, I tricked the fish. I'm happy. All I wanted to do was trick them, and that's what I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that sentiment. But as I have this bait here, let's talk about color.
Okay.
Are you matching the Hitch? Is that do you have a go-to series of colors that you use?
No. I've seen Hitch every different color in the rainbow here. I think with my eyes, I've probably seen 40 or 50 different Hitch, like holding them in my hand from either snagging them or seeing them floating on the surface. They're always a different color. I don't think I've ever seen 2 Hitch that are the same color.
Wow.
And so at that point, they've always got a little bit of blue on the sides. Sometimes they're silver. Sometimes they're brown. Sometimes they've got red fins. Sometimes they've got black fins. I'm not a big color picky guy here. Being the Hitch are different colors, different times of the year that I've seen them, I kind of just pick one and go with it. If I don't get bit on it after a few hours, or if I'm seeing followers that aren't very aggressive, they're kind of 4 or 5 feet behind it, not kind of seeing behind the bait. You see them do the little. That tells me I've got the right color. If that's not happening, I'll go ahead and change the color, maybe from a green top to a brown top, or a brown top to a blue top. But I'm never just like, oh, this is the one that they love. They're different every time I see them. So I'm kind of just throwing whatever feels right at them and hoping. That's my game here. I do a lot of hoping based on I've never seen 2 the same color.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about. Well, we don't ever fish around them, so I don't think I've ever seen a Hitch live in the environment. So it's interesting. They're almost chameleon to a certain extent. They're always changing. It sounds like
they're always changing, and the male Hitch to the female Hitch. The males are definitely more silver. The females are definitely more brown, like a carp. And so at that point, I mean, shoot, what do? You kind of just got to pick whatever you think's going to work, because who knows if a fish is going after a male Hitch or a female Hitch. I don't even think they know the difference. They're just going after something that's wiggling.
Right. Something that's on the larger, that has a larger profile.
Yeah. That's super interesting, because like now that I'm thinking about it, like there's definitely species of baitfish where like a lot of them are going to carry the same characteristics as it pertains to like color. Like if you're on the same body of water anyway, like a yellow, so for example, like a yellow perch on the Chesapeake Bay,
right?
They don't vary much as far as range and colors. Like at certain times of year, like based around the spawn, certain parts of them will get a little more vibrant, but for the most part, there's like standard issue yellow perch, but there's other baitfish species like a bluegill in a northern lake they don't all look exactly the same, even relatively. Like they have a lot of different hues, if you really think about it, depending on what they're living around and, you know, all these things. So that's fascinating that the Hitch, it's just they're chameleons, Pete. Like they just move and change, and it's that's super interesting.
Yeah, color needs to change too. Your approach. When you talk about getting these fish in efficiently, what's the real? You got 25-pound test, so you've got to be upgrading your spool. And do you opt for a lower gear ratio so you can crank, or
Yes.
do you want to go high and move line?
I don't want to move. I don't want to move line. It's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because I get this question a lot. You know, I see a lot of guys throwing 7-to-1 300 size reels, 8-to-1 300 size reels. I'm a 5-to-1 guy. I like a 5.4, 5.3-to-1 gear ratio. I fish a Shimano Cardiff 300, and I fish the new Baits 150 Salty. They've come out with a 6-to-1 reel. I'm really falling in love with that reel, by the way. I'm trying to get them to do a 5.4-to-1 reel, because that is really my comfort zone. But like you said, I don't want to move too much line when I'm gliding a glide bait. I don't want a 7-to-1. I don't want an 8-to-1. I want a 5-to-1, to where I'm not blowing the bait out even when I'm doing it fast. I noticed with a 7-to-1, I'm blowing the bait out a lot easier on, like, say, like with a half turn. If I got my reel and I'm winding like this, and I do these little half turns to get that bait to go side to side. If I do that with a 7-to-1, I'm blowing out 80% of the baits that I own. They're flipping upside down. They're doing this. I'm just pulling too much line in. I'm a firm believer that you keep it on the 6-to-1 to a 5-to-1 ratio, and your baits are gonna start doing this in the water versus this and coming up. And that is all to do with gear ratio. So like I said, I'm a mid-5 gear ratio guy. That seems to not blow out the majority of the glide baits on the market. The A-rigs, I'm liking to throw it on a slower retrieve also, because when I'm winding that A-rig in, I do the thing called I call it the double pump, where I pump the reel twice and it makes the A-rig do this in the water. It's going to expand 1, 2. Now, if I do that with a 7-to-1, it does the first explosion great, and then it never opens back up because I'm pulling too much line in, and it just like pulls the bait towards me without doing the full explosion of the open close. So I'm a slow gear ratio guy. I know everybody's different, but as far as wenching them in, like you were saying, landing those fish with a 7-to-1, you can almost pull too hard. There is a too hard, and I don't get to that too hard with a 5-to-1.
Yep. And I've experienced big fish with a high gear ratio where you almost can't get the line in because there's not enough torque that you can apply, you know, with the high gear ratios. They're a little bit weaker. So the 5-to-1 is you're able to move that line, you know.
That carries over into more than just swim baits too. Like dude, if you hook a big fish on a frog on a long cast in extremely matted vegetation, dude, you wind him in on an 8-to-1. I don't care how good a shape you're in. It's like you're gassed after winding a fish. Like it's so hard. Like there's a fine balance to where it's like speed, power. What do we really need for the situation?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And everybody's different. Everybody's got a personal preference, and that's what's great about bass fishing. I mean, we've all got our own preferences, and you know, there is no right or wrong. It's whatever you like to do and whatever works for you. For me, the slower gear ratio is definitely easier to wind in those bigger fish.
Let's go down that road to that A-rig. I love that flare technique that you're talking about. What are you rigging? Does California let you fish 5 hooks, and what are you rigging on the back of your A-rig?
So we're only allowed to fish 3 hooks here.
Okay.
We're only allowed 3 hooks. I fish a pretty big spread here. A lot of these fish have gotten trained to the smaller, 5-wire A-rigs, where you've just got, 2 teasers and 3 hooks on there. So 5 baits. These fish here have really gotten trained to that, to where it's hard to get them to bite that thing. What I do is I throw one that's got 6 wires here. Let me grab one real quick. We'll put one down here. Where are we at? All right. Let me get back into you. Okay.
Is this the Bailey rig?
This would be the Bailey rig right here. So this is what I got. It's a 6-wire rig.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is I've got 3 top teasers and then 3 bottom hooked baits. But inside the spread is where all the magic happens. This is where I've got all my 2.8s, 3.3s. So there's going to be 13 baits with 4 blades on this rig. And what that is just sensory overload is all that is. And go back to the ratio part that we were talking about. When you've got that much drag coming through the water, it's hard to wind that thing in. 5-to-1 reel is going to help you stay smooth. You're not going to get tired throughout the day. And when I go to pump it, it's going to actually flare the ball. It's going to come straight. And when I pump, it's going to collapse it. And when I stop the wind, it opens it up. And all the baits on the outside and inside, they kind of do this flare. They all like, and then I go right back into their retrieve. And then I do it again. So if there's something following it, it looks like they're all trying to escape. When you flare it, it goes down and then opens up the bait really big. And so I'm able to do that on the 5.4-to-1 on those bigger spread A rigs and get the bait to actually do the proper pulse that I want them to do to get the fish to swim through and bite it. That's kind of my main goal there. But that's why I fish the 5.4-to-1. It's just so much drag on these bigger baits. It's easier on the body and it actually works the bait a lot better.
Yeah. Yep. 13 baits. I love it. I've fished. I've had a little experience fishing a rig that big, but yeah, that's a lot of baits. I want to ask you this question. Jacob Swaim, he wants to know about the current conditions up there. How's the clarity on the north side of the lake, and how's that versus the south side and the Keys right now?
So the Keys have mud coming out of them. There is a feeder creek in the Keys, and we get a lot of runoff coming through those Keys down on the Rattlesnake side of the lake. You're going to have some mud. The mud line has pushed out past Rattlesnake Island right now, Jacob. If you going on the north end is mud, and it has pushed all the way past Shag Rock, all the way down to the central part of the lake. I saw mud just past Anderson Island. If you're familiar with the lake, which he is, you'll know where that is. The mud line stops about Anderson, and it continues all the way up to Lakeport. But between Anderson and Redbud, down that arm, that's the clearest water that I've seen. It was really clear. I saw 5-6 foot the other day when I was out on a guide trip, and that's kind of the where I was mainly focusing on shaking in the minnow. In the afternoon, we switched up towards that dirty water around Anderson Island, around Glen Haven Reef, Shag Rock, that area, and the fish were biting in the afternoon. They didn't want to bite that minnow in the dirty water in the morning, but come the afternoon, once we got that little 2-degree spike, they were biting that shaken minnow in that dirty water, and it didn't seem to affect them at all. I was catching just as many in that dirty water as I was in the clear water, but the north end is mud right now. Cache Creek has a mud line. I assume it comes out to maybe the Golden Gate Bridge dock. If you're familiar with Clear Lake, it's about a half mile out in front of Cache Creek. That mud line stops about there from what I saw. So we've got mud intruding from all corners, but seems like mid-lake down the Redbud arm is the cleanest water right now, and that's definitely where I've been.
What is that runoff? Is that snow melt runoff or rains you're having right now?
It's rain. We have, I want to say 8 or 9 feeder creeks in the north end. So when we get 3-4 inches of rain, those creeks start raging, and they are pumping mud off the side of the hills. There's a lot of vineyards that we get runoff from the surrounding hills around Clear Lake. So it's basically just runoff. The snow melt won't typically happen until the end of March. And then that water comes down crystal clear. That usually doesn't come down dirty at all.
Okay.
Yep.
I got you. Beyond the bites wants to know, are you going to be fishing the one bass this year? I guess they're having events on Clear.
Yep. We're going to fish the One Bass Open. They come up here every year in April. It's my favorite tournament. It's everybody's favorite tournament, I think, because everybody knows what could happen. It's 30 pounds a day is what it's going to take to win that sucker, and you're going out fishing for big ones. Tournaments to me are kind of like my vacation. I guide you weekly. I'm out looking for clients constantly during the week. And when tournament time comes, it's kind of like my time. I get to go find fish for me, and I get to go do it what I want to do, how I want to do it, and not worry about making somebody else happy. So I don't stress on trying to win tournaments here. And I think that's maybe why I win tournaments, is because, you know, it's like my vacation. I'm just out there having a good old time and thinking about me all day. But yes, we will be fishing the One Bass Open, as well as everybody else should too. This lake has been phenomenal the last couple months. And I wouldn't be surprised if it took, you know, 35 a day for 3 days to win that tournament this year, come in April.
Wow, that's a lot. And those formats are really cool. I've never fished one like that, but I think that's correct. They're where the co-anglers fish count towards you, or is this a team tournament? What's the format?
So the format for One Bass is shared weight. So we're never trying to not catch or not have our co-anglers catch fish. I'm always telling them throughout the day, dude, throw it right there. Hey, throw it right there. Pick this up, throw it right there. And we're working as a full team. And I can't tell you how much more enjoyable the day is on a shared weight format with a co-angler in your boat.
Yeah.
Than if you were to fish an MLF where I'm leaving the boat out in 30 so that he can't get to the juice. And that's not enjoyable for me. I want them to have fun too, you know? And so a shared weight format is ideal for pro-ams. And I think that's why One Bass has kind of a leg up on the field, because I mean, the co-anglers are having a blast throughout the day. They're able to stand up on the front deck with us and you know, look at what we're doing, and we're telling them where to throw, what to tie on, what we're doing the next morning, and it just makes it so much more enjoyable with the shared weight.
That is really cool, the way that you broke it down now, because there is, I mean, hearing your co-angler set the hook behind you in a MLF event is like, that's like traumatic. You know what I mean? Like you don't lose the that rings in your ears differently, Pete. It's it hits a little different when that guy's putting weight in your bag. That's cool stuff.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh man, I needed that one so bad, and accidentally said that out loud. Like,
you just hear the drag start going on the spinning reel, and it's like, oh,
there's nothing worse than finding the fish and timing it right, and then the co-angler gets the bite.
They wanted the drop shot instead of the jig that day.
Yep.
I'm notorious. For me, it's the smallmouth tournaments. My co's always have a bigger bag than I do, and it's just the nature of that species. It's hard to target them a lot, but boy, that would be fun. That would be fun if we had some of that format here in our part of the country. I would love to participate in an event like that. I've threatened to go out to the Lake Mead tournament.
The Open, the big Open.
Yeah, the Open out there. The U.S. Open. That's right. I've wanted to go out and fish that so many years and haven't made it yet, but maybe we'll get out there before too long.
You would do very well, Pete. I know your style. You would do very well.
I was fortunate enough to fish Lake Mead back in the 1700s, and it was when bass went there like 26 years ago. But it's the fishing out there is awesome. I felt real comfortable, but I'd love to fish that format. And you mentioned out on Clear right now where the Hitch are about to start making their move, right? So you're going to be switching up to your baits and your approach.
Yes.
Is that the best time to get out on Clear Lake? If the guy's, you know, if he had his wish list, right? What's the best time for a guy to come out there and check this place out?
Now, I always tell people these fish here, they're northern strain. I know DFG will tell us that there's mainly 90% Floridas in Clear Lake, but you don't see a Florida 10-pounder that you can't fit your hand in its mouth. That just doesn't make sense. And the majority of fish that we catch here have real small mouths and real big bellies. So that tells me that we still have a lot of northern strain predominant genes in this lake. The northern strain largemouth, they love eating in cold water. That 47 to 55 degree water, I've noticed the northerns are at their fattest, they're at their hungriest, they're at their most aggressive. So I always tell people December through March is your best time to come to Clear Lake in the cold water. Those fish are at their biggest point. They're at their most aggressive point. And I think that's strictly because they do have a lot of northern in their blood still. As you know, in Florida, you get a Florida strain largemouth, a low pressure comes in and the temperature drops. It definitely doesn't make the fishing better. Here on Clear Lake, when we get a snowstorm and it comes in on tournament day, like everybody here is giddy. Like the bags are going to be huge. We're getting snow and a low pressure system, and these fish actually turn on in that weather. So I tell people, cold water, guys, be here between end of November and end of March, and you will absolutely be here for the best time of fishing.
Excellent. And so when it gets in the warmer season, they're going to change. You're getting back offshore, I guess, after the Hitch get done their spawn and everything. You're going back out to the deeper water.
Yeah, we're going back out, maybe not to deeper water because Clear Lake is relatively shallow, but we're deeper for Clear Lake, yes. Instead of being in the creeks and around the creek mouths, now we're more headed towards, I'll say, end of April. Once they kind of, the majority of the fish have spawned, and then they're starting to come off their beds, they're going to get out into those grass mats, and the grass mats will happen way offshore, 200, 300, 400, 500 yards offshore. These grass mats start growing. Those fish all start wandering into those grass mats. They start coming out of the creeks, going back down to the rock ledges, kind of like they do on the Tennessee River, where, you know, that post-spawn rock ledge bite gets really good. These fish do the same thing. They come out of that shallow creek water and the shallow bank areas, and they get on the ledges, they get out into the grass, and yes, it's a little bit deeper. I'm not going to say they get out deep like they do in the wintertime, but they definitely pull off the bank and get into the deeper spots and do that after the spawn.
Okay. Well, it's an amazing lake out there, and Rich, we're going to have to make our plans to get out there in the winter.
For real. Let's go.
We got to do it. But there's another body of water I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know, the Delta, right? There's been some environmental issues out there and some concerns about the fish populations. Do you have your arms around that? What's happening at the Delta? Has the rain helped it too, or do you have an update for that?
The Delta's been a very finicky fishery the last 5-6 years. And it has to do with mainly the state spraying the grass, spraying the hyacinth, spraying the primrose, spraying all the stuff that the bass love to live in on the Delta. That has really affected that fishery. Last year, they didn't spray near as much, so we started to see it come back a little bit to where the weights did get a little bit bigger as to previous years. But it comes down to our stupid California government. It's what it comes down to. And when they decide to put these chemicals in the water to kill all this vegetation, they call it invasive vegetation. I mean, it's been there as long as I remember. It's been grass in Clear Lake for 30 years. How is it just invasive now to where they insist on having to kill it every summer? Is beyond us, and we're fighting it. We're putting up the good fight. We're doing everything we can, but the Delta was really affected by them spraying all the good stuff that the fish live in. And the last year it has come back a little bit because the spraying has gotten less, but they're still torching that place like nobody's business, and that really affects that fishery. Yeah,
well, that's a shame. Yeah, we hope to get some folks out there that are involved with that cause, and we'd like to, shed a spotlight on it as best we can to try to help. But
I know Bobby Barrick was a big advocate he was the one that was going to the town hall meetings and going to Sacramento. And once he realized he had no chance of stopping anything after years and years and years of petitions and going to meetings and trying to stop it, he packed up and moved to Texas. He did exactly what I was going to do.
No kidding.
You know what? We're not going to win this. I got to go somewhere where they protect what we're doing and help what we're doing, not completely try to hinder it. And he gave up. He would be a great one to have on your show and talk to you. He will talk to you about grass and bass all day long.
Yeah, well, let's make that happen, Rich. And it's a really tough process. We fight for anglers' access and rights here. Some things that we've gotten involved with, and we lost. I mean, the political process is so complex, and unfortunately, us lowly bass fishermen we get outvoted by the high dollar lake owners association. Yep. It seems like in a lot of situations, but yeah, we got to keep fighting that good fight. So we're going to keep doing that, for sure.
You got to keep fighting it. You got to keep fighting. It's the only hope we have, or else they will try to kill everything we've got.
Yeah. There's no doubt. And we gotta protect it. And I want to congratulate you for that voice that you have and the great work you're doing out there at Clear Lake. And congratulations on winning the Mike Iaconelli lookalike contest.
Oh man, BTC is never gonna let me live that down too. He let me have it last time, call me brothers and all sorts of stuff. But I see it when I've got a beanie on, especially. We look alike.
Well, you know, we might have to work something out because I know Mike suffered a injury to his bicep, so he might need a lookalike to fill in for him this week at the St. John's.
Sign me up, man. There was nothing I would love more than to fish in a Elite Series event one day. How cool would that be?
That'd be an easy way to do it, man. You could pull it off for sure. Hopefully Mike's competing this week. I don't know an update. Do you have an update on him, Rich?
It just, all I got is it's going to force him to fish slow. So he's on my fantasy roster. That's for sure.
Okay. Well, hey, Florida's the place that you want to fish slow.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Hey, maybe just dialing it back on Mike just a couple notches.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm with it. I'm riding with him, man. I'm saying flu game. Let's go.
Well, we'll hopefully things go well and that works out there. But man, thanks for being with us. It was too long. I don't want to make it this long again.
I love being with you guys, man. I love talking to you guys. I love talking fishing. I can talk fishing. I can talk Clear Lake. I can talk swim baits all day long. So I appreciate you guys having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back. And if anything's happening out there, anything new that's going on, be sure and let us know. We'd love to have an update, and we'll certainly be talking to you. Maybe we'll talk to you back in December. That would be fun when things are starting to pop out there at Clear Lake.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're prime time right now. Like I said, it is prime time. What we're doing right now is I'm kind of waiting for the water up north just to clear up a tint. And then I'm going to get out of that deep water. I'm going to stop shaking the minnow and I'm going to go throw the glide baits. I'm going to throw the LV 500s. We have a good old time up in that north end in that semi-dirty stained water. And that's going to come this week, so my eyes are I'm already changing lures on my boat and we're getting ready, man. It's a blast out here. I promise you. I'd love to have you guys out one time. Man,
we definitely want to get out there and experience that. I've been saying it for years. It's time, Rich. And I saw your website. You're on social. Guys want to book a trip with you. What's the best way?
Best way, guys, shoot me an email, bigbaitbailey@gmail.com. My other half gets into those emails. She sees them as they come in. She responds to you guys, gets you guys the dates that work best for you. Or just hit me up on my Instagram, my Facebook, private message me. She's going through all those messages too, making sure I'm not being an idiot and forgetting to read stuff because I am a bass fisherman. My mind is thinking fish, not work constantly. So those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. I've got the A-rig thing going, the baileyrig.com. You guys want to check out my rigs, go to the baileyrig.com, guys. The website is up and running. That has helped me tremendously, and it's all because of my fans and my supporters. You guys out there buying the rigs, that really gets me through the winter time when the guide trips slow down a little bit. And yeah, man, I'm easy. bigbailey@gmail.com. Let's go fishing.
Let's go fishing. Hey, thanks so much for being with us, man. We'll catch up with you real soon, I hope, and maybe we'll get out to the West Coast. I hope to do that soon as well. So, Paul Bailey, everybody, appreciate you being with us, Paul. Man, we'll catch up with you down the road.
Right on, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
you
Paul.
bet. We're going to take a quick commercial break, guys. What a fun conversation, man. I get so romantic about Clear Lake, man. It's just such a special place on the planet. To hear it's rebounded so wonderfully. I'm really wanting to get out on the West Coast, but hopefully we'll get to do that at some point here real soon, Rich.
Have you been to Clear Lake, Pete?
I've only ever fished one lake, Nacimiento in California. I've never fished there. I've been around the Delta, but never bass fished there.
Okay.
Like a dummy, we went salmon fishing. We went fishing for king salmon out in the Pacific when we could have gone fishing the Delta, the one experience that I had out on the West Coast. But hopefully sometime soon. Hey, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back. And we've got the sub of the week and some other cool stuff. We'll be right back after this.
We're off the clock to clock more fish, to fill our live wells and empty our coolers. because there's more to explore. The latest Humminbird fish finders work fast, see clearly, and know all the best spots. They fish even smarter paired with the Minn Kota and break down the water like never before. If you like your plans loose and lines tight, then it's time to explore. Only with Humminbird. Get right to the fight. New Mega Live 2 forward-facing sonar puts you on more fish with an ultra-clear, rock-solid picture of underwater action. Next-gen clarity, next-level fun. Only with Humminbird.
Right here, AquaView, mandatory equipment in my boat. I say it all the time. The smallmouths hide in the cracks in the rocks, and just saw a little bit of the same kind of rock with the cracks in it. And I realized that I had to put a bait down there. You wouldn't, idle over them and see them on your screen. You had to put a bait down there and suck them out of the rock. So, AquaView, big assist on this one.
And outdoors, Bassmaster Classic champion,
Coffee. The angler's ritual. A reason to leave your cozy covers, even if you aren't headed to the river. We started Angler's Coffee because, well, we love to fish, we love coffee, and we care. Think of it as the rise before the rise.
Why do you love casting fishing rods?
I'm truly losing less fish.
Is the sensitivity of the rod.
That they're made right here in North Carolina in the USA.
Strongest, lightest rod, 100% made here in Sanford, North Carolina.
From the drop shot rod to the flipping stick. Every rod has a purpose to it, and I rely on them all the time when I'm out there in a tournament.
Durability in the John Cruz Worming series, the counterbalancing in the handle.
It's the only rod I found that can withstand my hook set. Boom goes the dynamite.
Mother Nature may be tough. I'm tougher. I'll take you where chaos is the cost of entry and where the fish are worth the fight. Because the bigger the question marks, the better the quest.
Hey guys, give a shout out to Robert Barnes, Chris Curtis, Timothy Gallagher, Scott Van Leer, Robert Barnes. I think I already said hi to him, and a lot of the guys that joined us today. Mark Jackson. Good to have you guys with us today. Country Fried Fishing. That's
awesome.
Lot of good stuff.
Dan Allen back in the chat too. Good to see Dan, and Sean Wayman on our message board actually drew out Paul last year in that tournament we were talking about. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a cool deal, man. It's like that almost makes me want to fly to California and jump in the Wombass Open as a co. Like,
I wonder why that hasn't gotten momentum in Texas and Florida. That format, because it's a lot of fun. It's like it takes that little conflict that you can have sometimes and gets two guys working together. It just seems like so much more fun,
Right? Yeah. It honestly, and this is I kind of feel embarrassed to even say it, but I didn't truly understand exactly how that format worked until this show. Like I mean, I knew, I knew there was something to it as far as, the co-anglers being, they're not really in their own division, but like the way he laid it out, it actually made sense. And I was like, oh, like that sounds awesome. I would love to be a co-angler in that format. Like, like you could sign up for a co-angler team tournament and draw out with Jason Christie. Like, sign me up. Let's go.
Yep. But hopefully we'll fish one of those one day. Somebody needs to. East Coasters, are you listening? Let's get something here in the southeast and get going. Hi, Jocelyn. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. See, you could have gone to Clear Lake. You were out on the West Coast just a few months ago.
I was, but I decided to eat lobster rolls instead.
Also a good choice.
Yep. You were a little far south. I think you were all the way down
in San Diego,
in Southern California. But where's
he from? Where was Paul from?
Clear Lake's about it's a couple hours north of San Francisco.
Okay. I've been to San Francisco too. Could have went then.
Yep. San Francisco is the Delta. That's the other place that we were talking about. That's a tremendous fishery. But we are going to Texas. Man, it's sneaking up for us. You have any classic updates for us, Jocelyn?
We have our booth number. Give me 1 second.
All right. We're
While she's getting that, we got a lot going on over at Bass U. Pete, what's going on, man? Bassman spinnerbait promo right now. You get 4 of these bad boys. One of the best spinnerbaits on the market, in my opinion. It's got the light wire on there, good blades, a good hook, key to success on the water. You get 4 of those bad boys when you join Bass University for an annual subscription. And yeah, I mean, no better time than get in the library and watch some of the new seminars we got coming out. We just released Dakota eBear, Big Swim Baits, final copy. What else we got coming out, Rich?
Matt Airy, cold water power fishing is I believe that's our Thursday release. We just had Matt on last week. We were talking some about that pattern and some of the strategies you can employ, and if you're in the Carolinas in the spring specifically. So that is coming out on Thursday. A lot of good nuggets there in that seminar for that transitioning time of year. Fish are starting to move up. They're starting to get shallow, get active. He really lays out some strategies to catch them in relatively still cold water, but you can wind on them. You can power fish.
That's right.
Yes.
And
it's crankbait season.
It is crankbait season, Pete. And it's actually I have a bait sitting next to me right here that I'm really, really excited about. And they have it on Tackle Warehouse. I'm gonna drop the link for this bait in the comments there. But right around, I think we're a few weeks early, Justin, now to when we shot with Greg last year on the Bay. I think that was maybe early March. We had one of those real warm trends in early March, and we shot a seminar with Greg on the Bay on early season crankbait and seeing red. I just put the seminar down there in the chat as well. But this is the bait that Greg DePalma shattered the all-time Bass U weight and catch rate on for a seminar of putting bass in the boat. I mean, he had 25 pounds in 15 minutes, Justin?
Something like that. It was pretty crazy. I just threw the link in the chat. It's a nasty little crankbait.
It caught them. It caught the fire out of them. But anyway, it's the Nomad Design Atlas 55. And then they also have a Nomad Design Atlas 70. It's just a bigger size for that crankbait. But yeah, definitely check this out. I cannot wait to sling this thing on some pre-spawn rocks when we get those early warming trends, because I mean, it flat out caught them last year, and I want to be the one not holding the camera. I want to be the one casting it. So I'm ready for the first warm up, and you guys can get them too. They're on the Tackle Warehouse wish list, posted in the chat.
Excellent. Good stuff. Did we got to go back and get the wish list? Did the baits that he was talking about today?
Sure did, Pete. Sure did.
You got it, Justin?
Come on, man. I mean, you don't welcome me to the show, but I'll do that. Yeah, they're in the chat. If you want to go back, there's a couple of them that weren't on Tackle Warehouse, but everything he talked about that was on Tackle Warehouse, I threw the link in the chat. It's the Tackle Warehouse spring sale right now. So, man, it's a good time to stock up online, anything like that. And it's a bunch of it is discounted. So click the link in the chat or on our socials and go over there and start shopping.
Yeah,
I'll definitely have a nice little unboxing on the show in the next week or two. It's some of my go-to stuff for the spring. But while I'm rolling, man, I'm rolling. Sub of the week this week. Shout out Sean.
How about it?
With Maloha Matty Wong. That was at our Athens, Texas event. Shout out Sean for always being there, man.
Yep.
He's always there. He's always got his jumper, and it's a new design every year, man. We love it.
Yeah.
Well, we got something else going on leading into this week.
That's right. And I know Pete is not prepared, but I sure as heck am.
It's the season kickoff for Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing.
Coming back to the last year's champion, boy, right here. Pete, I'm going to give you my picks if you want to take notes so you can copy me. All right.
Dude, my picks are set, dude.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I said them last week, and you were truly were the champion last year only because I forfeited by not putting my picks in.
All I know is I was $5 richer at the end of that season. And it's going up to $10 this year, if I remember our last conversation correctly.
Well,
$10 this year for the winner.
I'm in for that easy, and I noticed we have a similar pick, Rich. We both picked Kyle Patrick in bucket A.
I got my picks handy. If we want to go through them.
Yeah, well,
I got mine ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
I will have mine ready in just a second, but
I'll go first while you guys pull it up. All right.
I thought it was cool that we had the same one. Well, just before we start that, I just want to give a shout out to our Bass University team, and it's in action. We've got Ike, of course, with dealing with an injury, but it looks like he's going to go, and Kyle Patrick is going to be active this week. And we're super excited about having those guys out, for Bass University this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can't look too far down the launch list and not find what we would consider a Bass U guy at this point as far as the instructors goes, because we like to work with everybody across the board, and it's exciting to see all these guys now that have been in the fold and in the mix with Bass U for so many years, getting ready to kick things back off for the season. So
Hunter and GDP too.
Hunter GDP.
Should be fun. You ready for my picks, Pete?
Is the fantasy different this year? Because I just logged in.
Yeah, it's updated a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little different. I had to relearn it myself. But we got, I think, over 1,200 people in the Bass University group. We're top 3 on Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing for groups.
Heck yeah.
No big deal there. But man, I'm going through my picks here as the champ. I'm going to run through them. My Group A pick, I was really stuck between 2 guys here. I'm doing research this year too. I'm getting into it. I was between Patrick Walters and Jordan Lee. Shout out Matt Panrack talking about this. Walters' percentage when he's in those shorty shorts to be in the top 10 is a lot higher when it's warmer out, and they got a cold trend going on. So I'm going with Jay Lee there. He can do a little bit of both. He can do the Sculpin deal, and he can go flip those mats when it gets cold and do that deal. So Group A, I'm going Jay Lee. Group B, I'm going with Tucker Smith. I'm not going to be left behind on the rookie train in the first event this year. I think the rookies are going to be just as good as last year. And Tucker Smith did good at Okeechobee last year around the same time period in the Open. That kid catches him everywhere he goes. So I'm going with Tucker Smith in Group B. Group C, I'm going with old Hack Dog because, his percentage is very high. I think he's like 36% owned in Group C. But, I mean, I don't know how you can't go with Hackney there. He's just Hack Dog. So we're going with Hackney there in Group C. Group D, I'm going with another rookie, Andrew Loberg. He's from California, I believe, and transplanted over to Gunnersville, and he I'm sure he knows his way around the grass, and he's a very low percentage of own. So I'm rocking with him because I have a feeling that might be the last time we're going to get him that low in Group D. And Group E, I'm going with Dakota Ebear. I'm going with 2 guys from our Athens, Texas seminars this year. I'm going with Dakota in Group E because I guarantee this is the last time you'll ever get him in Group E either. So that's my list, man. And I went with 80 pounds, 12 ounces as my tiebreaker weight.
Whoa.
Oh, I got to pull up my tiebreaker. I'll look that up in a second. But yeah, so I got Group A. I got Kyle Patrick, Bash University guy coming off of a great season last year. And, I pick up on certain things from certain guys as far as just their, I don't know, call it ability to be prepared for all scenarios. And I feel like Kyle has that just because of, and being a Northern guy, he understands, how to deal with kind of adverse conditions. And in Florida, when they get a cold front, shit gets adverse. That just things change, and you got to be able to adapt quick. So I got Kyle in Group A. I got Livesey in Group B, just from a flat out consistency point. I mean, it seems like he can go to any lake in the country, put a jackhammer in his hand, and he may not win the Derb, but there's a good chance that he's going to be in the mix at the end of the tournament just from his sheer ability to consistently get bites, keeping things simple. I mean, he preaches that in our Bash University seminars as far as keeping things simple. And the St. John's main river specifically really offers the ability to, if you keep things simple and you fish the body of water for what it has to offer, those main river fish have a tendency to react better in the cold front situations than, the fish in Rodman, which is actually off limits for this year anyway. So, so I got Livesey in Group B. I got Matty Wong in Group C, just from the standpoint that he's a guy that I feel like he could put a 10-pounder in the boat at any given time because he's not afraid to reach down and pick up that bigger glide bait. And there is places on the St. John's River where the water is a little bit cleaner than others, and there's shell bars that those big river fish are certainly feeding on larger than average size bait fish. So I got Matty Wong in Group C. I got Andrew Loberg in Group D, just because, like Justin said, he is a rookie. But he comes from the California Delta, so he understands tide, he understands river, he understands moving water, and he's, like Justin said, a Guntersville transplant. So he's also dealt with some of that Alabama, call it January, early February, just nasty coldness. And I feel like he's going to be coming into the event in fishing shape because he's coming off of Guntersville. And in Group E, I got Ike, man. I know he's dealing with an injury. But I'm riding with my dogs, man. It's crazy, but I feel like Mike is the kind of guy where when his back's against the wall, everything's kind of going haywire. He wins the classic. Like he's proven the ability that when everything is chaos in Mike's world, he can lock in and get into that next, place where I know he's had some tough tournaments at the St. John's over the years, but I got a feeling. So I'm riding with Mike in Group E. And I don't know my winning weight, but I want to say it was like 82 or something, 82-1, but I'll double check that.
All right, Jocelyn, you hear all this technical mumbo jumbo these boys are spewing out on the airwaves.
I'm going to go with everyone that I
like. I'm Kyle Patrick. He was my good luck charm last year. Scored more points for me. John Cox, smiling John Cox. Just love that guy. He's in my bucket B.
Ooh,
Greg Hackney's my favorite. Picking him no matter what. Love Brandon Cobb, great Bash University speaker, and got to know Dakota Ebear a little bit this year. So I picked him. So that's how I'm going to destroy this team because they're overthinking it, Jocelyn. They're overthinking it. We're going to
overthinking it, underthinking it got you to forget to set your lineup last year. So I won. So whatever way you want to spin it,
that we forgot to set our lineups a couple
Justin gets hostile when he doesn't get introduced.
It is what it is. I'm back here pasting links. I can't even get a hello, but it is what it is, Man, the Cox pick is good. I had a tough time not going with him there. I mean, that guy is awesome.
I think
he's never thrown. He hasn't even thrown a minnow. Like he doesn't have live scope. He's never thrown a minnow.
Yeah.
Like he's just a dog. Big Cox don't need no live scope.
Happy rigging the pads.
Yep. He's in a Vexus this year, isn't he? I think he switched boats this year.
Yeah, he's in a Vexus. He left Crestliner. Yeah.
He's got a
A lot of guys are in Avexis this year. Seth too. Somebody else is also, but yeah.
What you got, Jocelyn?
On fantasy, what's the percentage next to their name? Because John Cox has like 59%.
Yeah, it's how many people are picking him. So 59% of people are picking John Cox in that thing.
Gotcha.
But you don't want to always pick the guys with the highest things because you get more points for the guys with the lower ones. Like that's why I'm going with some of the rookies because they have like 0.8% or 1.2%. Okay. And I think those boys are going to figure out how to scope them there.
Yep, that's why you're going to go down this year, Justin.
We'll see.
Keep it going. I have 72 pounds. I went super low on the weights this year because the when I picked my weight, it was like the temperature was going to be in the 70s, and I was thinking,
have to edit my weight a little bit.
I changed mine too. Yeah, so did I.
I picked my lineup like 3 weeks ago, so. Everything I said as far as the technical stuff, why that was just
straight off the rip. Same for me. But I think I started mine with like 72 and I bumped it up to 80 just from like past weights. I feel like there's going to be a day or two where somebody catches like 24, 25, and then they might catch 18, 19. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's still time to put other people to join our group, right?
Yeah, it's still you got until Wednesday night, I think it locks. So get in there, man.
Yep.
Good. Back to the winner.
Come on. You got to help me, people. You got to help me bury Justin way down in the standings.
Yep. We'll see about that.
Jocelyn, you were good. Did you find our booth at the Classic?
I sure did. It's 4017.
4017. Come by and see us. We're gonna keep you guys posted. We're working on some cool stuff for the Classic this year, and we're glad to be back in Texas, and it's going to be a fun time. So we talked about our great program right now with the Bassman spinner rates. You want to subscribe to Bass University. It's a great time to do it, guys. Most of the country is still in the cold. A lot of it's lighting up. We're seeing Florida, Texas, California coming alive with fishing right now, and the spring is coming. So it's a great time. Learn a new technique, something you're not confident in. This is the time to get after it, and it's all available at Bass University with the best instructors of the world helping you with your fishing game. You're going to fish with more confidence. You're going to catch more fish. So get over there and get subscribed if you haven't done that yet. Is there anything else we got on the table, guys?
I wanted to know your guys' thoughts on that BFL that was on Sam Rayburn this past week.
It was great.
The Bassmaster Open, that was one day. It was
the Bassmaster Open. You said BFL.
Yeah, because it was one day.
I got the why from Bass, and I understand it, but the angler in me, if I was in that tournament and that's how things rolled out, and I paid that entry fee for a 3-day tournament and it got left to one.
Can we explain what happened first?
Yeah, apparently wind weather shut 2 of the days down. The first day and the last day were canceled. They fished one day, winner take all.
Wow.
For that tournament. So that was the controversy. The 3 days, by design, are to separate the field by the angler that's able to adjust, that's able to outcompete, outthink, out-strategize, and out-execute, right? So by taking those days away, man, it turns it into a pot tournament, a one-day who caught a big fish. It to me brings a lot more luck into who's going to win that tournament. And the more days you compete, the less luck is involved in my assessment of the situation. So I don't like it. I think we're getting a little bit too soft. Yeah, soft is the word.
All of it is.
They're like, come on, let's fish, man. The wind blows. We know how to manage it. We've strategized to compete in the wind. We've learned different ways to get things done, and the guys that are good at that, man, they're being penalized. They're being penalized, in favor of the scopers or, the guys that need the calm weather to execute on their patterns.
It's the risk you run when you schedule tournaments in February in Texas. I mean, that's like April for us up here. Like April's like that crazy volatile, or early April's that crazy volatile time of year where like you can have, it's gonna be 70 and sunny today, and it's gonna blow 30 and be 43 degrees the next day. It's like, how do you do? I mean, like I said, I texted some with somebody from Bass, and from their perspective, like I totally understand it. But like their stance on it was like, look, we're going to deal with this unless we stop scheduling tournaments this early in the year, regionally based on just what weather data is. So, but I agree with you, Pete. Like I said, if I was the guy that won, I wouldn't be that unhappy. But if I was every single other guy, maybe outside of the top 10, I'm going to be,
Imagine that happening to you in July on the Chesapeake. What would you do?
Be griping about it. That's it's unless you're in the top 10, Rich.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I get it. Like they don't have, Bass doesn't have the funding allocated to keep, to keep that many people on staff there for an extra day. And, with bringing in camera guys now for opens events too, like that adds another dynamic. And like I said, I asked all the questions. I said, why can't you just move it to Sunday? Why can't you move it to Monday? And I mean, from all the business standpoint and sending 233 guys out in a dangerous situation, I get it. But that doesn't change the fact that as an angler, you're going to be perturbed. It's not going to be in a lot of cases.
It is beautiful that they're covering all the opens now. Love that. But that's where the days, that's where it gets tough because, man, to have a production crew like that, for another day or another 2-3 days, it doesn't make business sense. They can't do it. From a bottom line, from a P&L perspective, they're going to lose. But I would like to see them get a little bit more aggressive. And I don't know the particular wind or what they dealt with or why, what caused them to shut down. But I would like there's a lot of days that have been shut down that I would have liked to have seen the guys go. And we've done it for 30 years. I mean, of course, they never shut our tournaments down. I mean, it would be gale force out there, and we had to learn how to deal, and we did. We learned how to deal with that stuff.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to get too
I don't begrudge the guys that won or did well. Congratulations to them, man. They made the most of that situation.
I mean, the guy that won, sweet, $50,000, a big trophy, and you're going to the Classic for one day of fishing. But this is a whole nother show I think that we could have about this. But just in the last 10 years, you can see the difference in the trend of decision making, and so there's so many different like if Bass sends the guys and somebody, a co-angler gets tossed out of a boat and drowns. Mm-hmm. They're roasted because of social media. So like it's just part of it. But.
Yep. Well, that's the argument. And it's a crazy story. We'll see what happens at the next one. We're all going to be watching the elites and cheering our boys on. And we look forward to seeing everybody at the Classic. And thank you guys. Thank Big Bait Paul Bailey for being with us today. That was a fun show talking West Coast. What are we going to talk next week? Maybe we'll move into the Tennessee River. Let's see what happens.
I can tease it about what we're going to talk next week.
You can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, old Big Fish Bobby just got it done down on the Harris chain for MLF side of things. So we may or may not be talking how to catch big giant Florida bass in some extremely adverse conditions that they dealt with on the Harris chain on the final day. So
they had massive wins. Interesting perspective. The MLF doesn't really need to deal with the wind as much because they get to launch wherever they want, or travel is different.
Trailering policy can be implemented at any time, which is whole nother
Interesting. Interesting stuff. So we looks like we're going to Florida next week. Hope you guys have a great day. Get over to Bass University. There's a pre-spawn is happening at Bass University. So get yourself schooled up, and we will see everybody here next week. Bass University Live. Have a great day, everybody.